Okay, there are a few different ways we could approach solving question 7. One method we could use is substitution. Substitution means I take all of this whole expression here and plug it in for y. If I do that, I leave the 2x as is, I put the 5, and then instead of y, I put parentheses, and I fill in the value that was equivalent to y. If I choose this process, I'm going to have to distribute that 5. And then I combine my like terms to get 12x. And now I need to solve. I'm going to subtract 10. And then I'm going to divide by 12. I'm going to get 9 over 12. That simplifies to 3/4. So that's my value for x. I can see as I go down my answer choices, there is only one choice that has that value for x. I should double check and make sure I solve for x right, and I get 3.5 for y. So in order to do that, I take my original equation and I replace the x with 3/4, and I follow order of operations. So 2 times 3/4 gives me 1.5 plus 2 gives me 3.5. So y is 3.5, and that is correct. This is probably your easiest option for solving. Another option is that you could take the x value and plug it in. So what do I mean by that? If I take 3/4 and plug it in, since this is multiple choice, I could see that I get 3.5 for y, and the first one worked. If I were to take any of these other x values and plug it in here, I might not get my answer for y to be correct, and I would know they were wrong. So that's another option. Number 8, which expression is equivalent to the square root of 3? So what we want to remember about the square root symbol is that it is taking the second root. Okay, and then we want to remember that a number written like this is also considered raised to the first power. So there's a rule that we talked about in class. If I have a radical like this, I can rewrite it with a fractional exponent by putting the root in the denominator. Okay, this is called the index. It goes in the denominator. So if I look at this question, it's 3 to the first, but then I'm going to divide that by 2. So 3 to the 1/2. So that's a rule we need to remember to convert from a radical to a fractional exponent. Now, if you completely forgot that, you can use your calculator to help you. So if I take the square root of 3 in my calculator, I get 1.73 if I round. If I put this in my calculator, 2 raised to the 1/3, I get 1.25 or 1.26, sorry. So that's not the same. I could do 3 raised to the 1/2 and I get my 1.73. I could do 1/2 raised to the 3rd and I get 0.125. And then I could do 1/3 raised to the 2nd and I get 0.1111. So if you completely forgot this rule and you had a multiple choice question like this, use your calculator to help you pick the correct answer. Pick the one that's equivalent. All right, moving on. Number 9. Okay, number 9, we have a scatter plot here. And it's asking us to interpret the scatter plot. So look at our answer choices. We have weak positive, weak negative, strong positive, strong negative. Sorry, I didn't show the answer choices. Here we go. So positive means that our graph has a positive slope. This is a positive slope because it is rising from left to right. So I know that B and D are incorrect. Then I have to decide between strong and weak. Strong and weak are indicative of how close together the points are to the line. These points are very close to this line of best fit. There are minimal amounts of space between the line and the points. So this is a very strong relationship. So this is going to be choice C. Number 10, we have a solving question. We notice that we have an x squared and there's no other x's involved. That's telling us we should just isolate the x. Okay, we are not going to have to factor. We don't have to do quadratic formula. We can just get x by itself if there's only one x. So in order to do that, I would add 21 on both sides, and I get 3x is equal to 243. And then I divide by 3 on both sides, and I get x squared is equal to 81. When x is squared, in order to undo that, I have to take the square root. When I take the square root, I get either positive or negative 9. So I only need to type in one answer. I could choose to type in positive 9, or I could choose to type in negative 9, and either choice would be marked correct. Now, if you really wanted to do quadratic formula, you could totally solve this with quadratic formula. You would just have to move the 222 onto the other side, and you'd have 3x squared minus 243 is equal to 0. Your a would be 3. There is no b, and your c would be negative 243. So if you really wanted to do quadratic formula, you could type that whole equation into quadratic formula, and you're going to get the same answer. It's just going to take a little longer. All right, number 11. If you want to pause for a minute and read the question to yourself. Okay, we want to know which equation could represent the function. So here we can tell that these dots, if you can't see it on the copy very well, these dots are decreasing. So we know this is going to be a decay question. We can also see that our y-intercept here is at 0.2. So some important things to think about is that this part of the function is going to be our y-intercept. So if we look through our choices here, we can tell that C and D are incorrect because they have the wrong y-intercept. The correct y-intercept is 0.2. Okay, DK is telling us that our B value is going to be less than 1. So if I look at my B values, both of these B values are going to be less than 1. This would give me 0.9, this would give me 0.5. So that's not going to help me. I'm going to actually have to, use some more knowledge here to figure out which one is correct. So what I could do is I could plug in some values. If I look at this point is 1, 0.1. So if we plug in a 1 for the x, we'd have 0.2 times 1 minus 0.1. We're raising it to the first because our x value is 1. We could evaluate this. So if you were using your EOC calculator, you could type that straight in just like this. If you're using your handheld calculator, you can type it into your handheld calculator. When I type this in, I get 0.18. That is not the answer I'm supposed to get. I'm supposed to get 0.1. So this does not work, right? For the next one, if I have 0.2, 1 minus 0.05 raised to the first, I can type this into my calculator, and I can see that I do get 0.1. That was the answer I was supposed to get. So B is correct. So when in doubt, you can plug in coordinates for x and y. You plug in the x, you should get the y for your answer.